I absolutely love Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight. It was the first film I saw multiple times in theater. The opening bank heist with Hans Zimmer's score, masked clowns discussing the Joker, and Heath Ledger's captivating performance as he takes off the clown mask to reveal his painted face is a perfect start to a film. This is the film that got me interested in the character of Batman, and I went on to read the comics and play the games and see all the other films. So, naturally, when Matt Reeves' The Batman came out, I was interested but skeptical. I was excited to see Robert Pattinson's portrayal of Batman/Bruce Wayne, as he's one of his generation's best actors. But The Batman arrives at a very different time than The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight is very much a case of the right director making the right film at the right time. So today, I want to take a look at the context behind these two different versions of Batman, and examine the strengths and weaknesses of the two films and how the time and place helped create the two different versions. In the 2000s, Batman was dead, and George Clooney's Bat Nipples killed him.
You apologize to the crowd at Comic-Con for Batman and Robin.
I always apologize for Batman. Let me just say that I actually thought I destroyed the franchise.
Batman was a silly superhero. A billionaire who dressed up as a bat? What? Why? Why not just have a normal black suit? What's with the weird bat affectations? Batman just has such a silly history with shows like Adam West and the array of weirdly holiday and nursery rhymed themed villains. Even Tim Burton's hugely popular Dark Batman, which was good, it was still super silly. And the failed reboots in the 90s didn't help make Batman more serious.
Kill the heroes! It's the hockey team from hell!
Superhero films in general were fairly limited in the 2000s. I mean, we have Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, which was obviously a huge success, but there were plenty of failures too.
Steve says jumps around like a cat.
Iron Man 1 was released a month prior to The Dark Knight, so it wasn't a huge influence on this film. So that's the situation of Batman and superheroes when Christopher Nolan arrives. Unlike previous Batman directors, Nolan was coming off a track record of 3 thrilling suspense films: The Following, Memento, and Insomnia. Importantly, they were films with characters with weird conditions, but set in the real world. The Following is a perfect no-budget feature film about a writer who accidentally gets involved in crime, and the movie still holds up now. Memento is a story about a man who has severe amnesia and is searching for the killer of his wife. It was clever, exciting, and nominated for Best Original Screenplay. Insomnia is the story of a grizzled LA detective who goes to Alaska to solve a murder. Like the title suggests, the cop suffers from insomnia and gets no respite from the sun that never seems to set in the Alaskan summer. This film feels like it could be a sequel to Heat, with Al Pacino's character haunted by the world of crime in LA. We'll come back to Heat later. Insomnia is also the first time Nolan casts against type in order to elevate the film's tension. Casting Robin Williams as the villain is challenging for the audience, as the audience never really wants to believe that the guy they grew up watching being silly all the time could also play this character who does something so evil. Nolan uses this again when casting Heath Ledger as the Joker. All 3 of these suspense films deal with conflicted characters who are questioning how they got into their respective situations and what responsibility they personally bear. These characters must find a way out alive, but they also have to deal with their own guilt. Previous Batman directors include Tim Burton. He's a great director, but he's not a great thriller writer. His films often focus on the outcast and loner. So there's an obvious appeal in making Batman, but it's very different than Nolan's approach. To separate Batman from the silly sets of past Batman films, Nolan placed Batman in the real world. His Gotham is an amalgamation between New York and Chicago. Gone are the comic book versions of Gotham. This made Batman feel modern and relevant. Nolan also creates a citywide epic by borrowing heavily from Heat, complete with heists, car chases, and explosions. And, similarly to Heat, at the center he places a duel between good and evil. Nolan also brought contemporary action and fight scenes. Gone are the stilted and goofy sequences, and instead you have choreographed fights inspired by films like Jason Bourne and Casino Royale. Other contemporary superhero films like Spider-Man, Iron Man, and the Hulk all had cool fight scenes, but the main characters were CGI for most of those sequences. Nolan brought visceral action to his films. So visually and stylistically, Nolan had brought Batman into the real world. Furthermore, he made The Dark Knight into an allegory on the war on terror. The films dealt with topical issues such as, how do you fight an enemy who just wants to watch the world burn? Is mass surveillance ethical? What use of violence is justified? Is torture justified? These were, and still are, interesting and relevant questions. At the time, the US was grappling with the Patriot Act, and Congress was debating on banning torture methods such as waterboarding. A few years later, Edward Snowden's leaks revealed that the CIA had a massive spying operation on US citizens. And of course, Heath Ledger created an unforgettable Joker with his performance. I could make an entire video just on his performance. Importantly though, he creates a character that somehow feels real. Ledger's Joker offers multiple origins, but any of them are better than the idea that the Joker just fell into a vat. But what I think really elevates The Dark Knight is how Nolan uses the Joker as a foil for Batman. The Joker is a cynic and sees humanity as fundamentally selfish and evil. He thinks that everyone is just as evil as him, given the chance, and sets two fairies of people against each other to prove his point. Batman's faith in humanity, which is what stops him from killing the Joker, is also what separates himself from the Joker. In Nolan's film, the Joker is apprehended by Batman, but he's defeated by the citizens of Gotham, who refute his cynical thesis and refuse to blow each other up. Giving this agency to ordinary citizens creates a deeper and more interesting superhero film. This combination of having the right director, create a story that was ripe for the time, and create it with such high quality made The Dark Knight the high watermark for superhero movies. Now, Matt Reeves' Batman comes to us at a very different time. The superhero genre is controlling the entire box office. DC films are dark and gritty. Ben Affleck has tried and failed to get his Batman off the ground. Jared Leto had a horrible Joker performance. Joaquin Phoenix had a dark and gritty remake of Taxi Driver / King of Comedy, complete with Martin Scorsese as a producer. Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill had a successful revival of their Batman and Joker in the Arkham Batman games. So, in this Batman-saturated world, how does Matt Reeves carve out a Batman that feels distinct and unique? He goes back to the source material. Instead of setting the film in New York or Chicago, he creates a unique Gotham with gargoyles and neon. He combines the Gothic architecture of Glasgow with a noir style. Visually, this film is awesome. In particular, the red and black art style is reminiscent of Batman Year One, or even Batman Beyond. The diary entry style that the film opens and closes with is also directly taken from Batman Year One.
Thursday, October 31st. The city streets are crowded for the holiday. Wednesday, November 6th.
Reeves also distinguishes his fight scenes by using the stylized action that's kind of inspired by the Arkham games, in particular the scenes in the Iceberg Lounge with the flashing lights and the machine gun scene. The return of the Batmobile as a real car is another example of using source material. Nolan opted for a modern military style, which was practical but a bit boring compared to Reeves' awesome car. I mean, come on, this scene is incredible. And the most important difference maybe between Nolan and Reeves is that in the comics, Batman is always proclaimed as the world's greatest detective. Nolan's films were great, but they were definitely not detective films. Unless you count recreating a bullet from a concrete wall detective work. Instead, Reeves frames the film as a police procedural and shows Batman struggling to solve the case. I also think it's important to acknowledge that Reeves is kind of stuck in this Joker predicament. Heath Ledger created an iconic performance that can't be imitated. But many of Batman's villains are just plain goofy. The Joker is also much more famous than any of his rivals, and the way that he poetically kind of fits with Batman, it's difficult to not just immediately want to use him. So using the Riddler was a really smart and cool choice, and the way that he updated him made him fit really well into a modern context. Nolan's Batman focused on this huge fight between good and evil, with Batman and the Joker as the embodiment of these abstract ideas. In contrast, Reeves' Batman creates a more specific and deeper world with the actual politics of this Gotham City. He goes into detail about Thomas Wayne's connection with Falcone, as well as Falcone's connection with the police force. He modernizes the story with a QAnon-style villain using the internet to radicalize people. This type of story wouldn't necessarily make sense in 2008, because we didn't use the internet the same way back then. Now the entire nation is aware of how people can be radicalized online and induced into being violent. Reeves is also aware that his audience is deluged by superhero films. So this question, if it's okay for Batman to be a vigilante, why not other people, is much more relevant and something that people wouldn't necessarily understand in 2008, or at least wouldn't necessarily connect with as much as they do now. Anyway, I'm really looking forward to whatever Matt Reeves and Robert Pattinson do next. It'll be interesting to see if this film kicks off a new DC cinematic universe. Or perhaps we'll see more of Arkham Asylum. I'd love to hear your thoughts on these two different versions of the Batman, so let me know in the comments.